Do I bang it?
Bang it.
We're going to call this meeting to order. Ms. Morehart, will you do the roll call?
Ms. Parks?
Here.
Ms. Wilhite?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Present.
Mr. Jeter will be here. He's just running a little late. Mr. Lee? Mr. Lombardino? Here. And I'm here. We have 5, and it is a quorum.
Okay. Ms. Morehart, would you do the invocation?
Sure. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we pray to you today to guide us. I pray that you would help each one of us to see what you want us to do, Lord, and I pray that you would let us do it. And Lord, I want to, most of all, thank you for sending your Son, Jesus, to die on the cross to save us from our sins. For we ask this in his name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, approval of the agenda. I note that Mr. Lee has joined us.
I second the approval of the agenda.
Do we have a motion?
Oh,
You can make the motion.
I made a motion to
Okay.
approve the agenda.
Second.
And do we have any comments on the agenda?
Good afternoon. Before I state my name and my address, I would like to invoke the right to have my address not on public record. My child is a victim of a violent crime, and therefore I am asking that you don't require my name, as it is irrelevant to any of these proceedings. Cassie Rogers, Bossier City, Louisiana. This agenda is incorrect. I distinctly remember everyone speaking about the options, whether or not we can have the 3 options for, requested the 3 options, or if we could do it for term limits, and I don't see that here on the agenda. And I will refer you to section 22 of the new chapter, 21 of the old chapter, where it talks about amendments to the charter and amendments to be presented to the city council, where it says, and it states, and I quote, "Unless otherwise provided by ordinance, any proposal," well, it doesn't say it on here, but it says proposed amendments or amendments. Therefore, if chapter 21 or 22 in this case had been read, you would have clearly been able to tell that you do in fact have the right to send more than one amendment to the city council for them to put it on the ballot. And therefore, I would ask you to immediately vote to put the 3 option for term limits on the agenda. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, no further comments on the item 4. Let's, Ms. Morehart, if you would please poll our commission. Any comments from the commission? Okay.
Ms. Parks?
Yes.
Ms. Wilhite?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardino?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. It passes unanimously, 6-0.
Item number 5, approval of the minutes from the September 11th, 2024 meeting.
So, Madam Chair, I do have a motion, and it is passed out, so Commissioners, you have a copy of it. The top of it says "move to," and it's a lengthy motion. So, move to adopt for submission to the Bossier City Council the Bossier City Charter changes to be served up to the voters.
Is that for item 6 or 5, approval of the minutes?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Do I have a
I make
motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Lisa,
Getting ahead of myself.
Second.
All right, any comments from the audience?
David Crockett, 653 Domain Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. Madam Chairwoman, I want to discuss a few issues from the minutes, and basically I wanted to address that term limits is about change in Bossier City, and basically some of the comments that you made in the last meeting. Term limits isn't about one wayward councilman that you keep repeating. This is a baseless statement. Darby, Williams, Free, and yes, Montgomery would be term limited. 3 of these voted to ensnare Lane Coleman, and 1 of them has been aware of it throughout this process, but all 4 of them have driven up the city's debt. Also, they are also aware of the ethics issues that resulted or led to the Lane Coleman lawsuit, and I think that that's why Bossier City wants term limits. This is about making government better. They repeat errors that lead to high debt and wasteful spending, and they often accuse or attack the public. 2, Ms. Parks, ma'am, your comments last week were kind of disingenuous. If you look at the petition that I put in front of you, all of you, there are 2 basic resolutions, and it's very clear, 2 sentences that tell you what kind of term limits they are. They very clearly talk about retroactivity on there, and anybody who signed the petition on its face knows that term limits were retroactive. So I think that was disingenuous. Ms. Parks, you'd be more fair if you blamed your friends for not being able to read the petition or that they have a feeble memory than to accuse the public who did this petition. However, the petition is clear. Secondly, our publicity for the intent of term limits has been existing throughout the 2 term limit petitions we did, and the publicity has been overwhelming that people knew that there were retroactive term limits. And then Mr. Jeter inferred that he was not absolute about retroactivity with term limits. Mr. Jeter went out and got signatures on this petition. So if you listen to his comments from last week, he basically inferred that he was not necessarily for term limits, yet he went out and got signatures, though he didn't turn those signatures in when we requested them. He did gather signatures with me, and for some reason he seems to have turned against some of the intent of term limits with retroactivity. The DPAC, the RPAC, the NAACP, and Mr. Jeter agreed that term limits with retroactivity would be good for Bossier City, yet he turned against it. Mr. Jeter was, in fact, a vehicle for this group to continue to fight our term limits petition, and that's the belief of all of our group. And I'm going to cut my last comment because apparently you're looking at some other amendment, so I appreciate it, but thank you for letting me speak. Sorry about that.
Cassie Rogers. I'm speaking about the meeting minutes. I find it awfully unfair, especially since she's not here. But on the meeting minutes, there were things like the opinions of these commissioners and how they felt about certain things. Those made it into the meeting minutes. But none of the things that Ms. Vicki Whitman proposed or asked about or anything else made it into the notes for the meeting minutes. These meeting minutes have been sparingly at best. I understand that everybody is learning, and I do believe that God equips the called. So if you didn't know now, or you didn't know then, what you know now, I suggest that these meeting minutes be rewritten. They do not reflect the meeting minutes of last meeting. I do not see on there anywhere where Ms. Vicki Whitman's comments were made. I think she made some very good points and some very fair points. And I ask you all to adjourn, rewrite the minutes, and let's focus on what the people need today. This is not something that we can just let go, as between December 9th and June 25th, the people took care of the issue of term limits. I don't believe it's in the meeting minutes, but I could be wrong. I heard Mr. Jeter talk about the calls that he's gotten about this charter commission require y'all to put term limits on, and that's what the people want. Well, the people took care of that when you guys failed to do that early on. Until last meeting, no one has talked about the importance of the people's petition, except the people on this side of the aisle. Again, we are now in meeting 15, according to my count, and not one single person has spoken out against our proposed amendments from that people's petition stating that that's not what they wanted. If they spoke out to you guys, they could have spoke out up here too, but they chose not to. I think it is also quite funny and comical, not funny ha-ha, but funny so that you don't cry, that the judge's unconstitutional comments and how it was disingenuous and how this was a circular issue were also not addressed in those meeting minutes. I ask you to have the meeting minutes reflect the meetings. Thank you.
Calvin Hubbard, 5805 Hollyhock Lane, Bossier City, Louisiana. On the matter of minutes, according to Robert's Rules of Order, as I have read them and I understand them, the minutes only have to record actions of the body. They do not have to include any comments. Comments may be added, I guess, possibly, but the minutes are not required to carry comments from anyone. The minutes carry the actions of the body. And so I ask, as you consider that matter, do the minutes meet that requirement? If they do, then pass them. If they do not, then you can amend them and go forward from there.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission? That, we have a limit of 4 public comments.
For and against.
Oh, who was that?
That's
We have not had 4 and 4 for and 4 against is the way your rules read.
Yeah,
not, that, our rules do not read that way.
you're sure?
Yes.
So who all was?
We've had 3.
You've only had 3 people. How
Had
can y'all
3.
not count
Yeah,
every
one
time
more.
I come up here?
I was
I'm
agreeing
not,
with Ms.
I'm not
Moore.
addressing you, Richard.
We've had 3?
We've had
Okay.
3.
The colonel, Cassidy, and the gentleman here, correct?
Go for it.
That's right. That's twice. At least y'all are consistent. Rex Moncrief, 2208 Hickory Ridge Drive, Bossier City. So this is more procedural about the minutes, but on January the 16th, 2024, at about 19 minutes into the meeting, Richard Ray said, and I quote, "This is a public body, and you will be bound, in my opinion, by open meetings laws. And so you wouldn't be able to meet outside of a meeting with a quorum, or it will be considered a violation of open meetings laws." Richard Ray's open meetings quote is even in the officially published minutes. As most lawyers tend to do when they're on defense, he's done a masterful job on the mic at confusing the issues at hand. Case in point, at the last meeting, he tried to use revised statute 4217D in a sleight of hand trick that the Charter Commission was not a public body, contrary to his own statements as the acting city attorney. As he well knows, citizen advisory boards or groups have no binding decision-making power. However, the Bossier City Charter Commission does in fact have binding decision-making power. Section 2104 of the city charter states, quote, "The city council shall," and words matter as we've been repeatedly told, shall submit any amendment or amendments as recommended by the Charter Review Commission to the electors of the city. So the public who may be watching this, do not be deceived by the cheap parlor tricks. This Charter Commission is in fact a public body and subject to open meetings laws, just as Richard Ray stated on January the 16th, 2024. One other point, y'all are all worried about Preston Friedley's issues potentially with the Ethics Board. You wouldn't be worried about that if this was not a public body. Thank you.
Any comments from the commission? Okay, let's do note that Mr. Jeter has joined us. So we are voting on item number 4, approval of minutes from the September 11th, 2024 meeting. We have a motion and a second, so time to take vote.
Ms. Parks?
Yes.
Ms. Wilhite?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Jeter?
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Lumbadino,
Yes.
and myself, yes. 7-0 passes unanimously.
Item number 6, new business. Number 1, consider action on revised Bossier City Charter for submission to the Bossier City Council.
Madam Chair, I do have a motion, and it is quite lengthy, so each commissioner has received it, so you can follow along. I move to adopt for submission to the Bossier City Council the Bossier City Charter changes to be served up to the voters in 3 separate voting options. Number 1, the updated Bossier City Charter with the edit changes as adopted by the Bossier City Charter Commission, excluding Chapters 3, Section 3.01A2, 3.01B, 3.01D, and 3.02B, and Chapter 4, Section 4.01. Number 2, at-large council member Division A and B, that would be edits 9, 11, and 12. Chapter 3.01A2, 3.01D, and 3.02B. And number 3, term limits, edits 10, 42, and 42.5. It would be Chapter 3.01B, Chapter 4.01 as adopted in the revised charter shall be served up to the voters. Members of the city council shall be eligible for re-election except that no person who has been elected to serve as a member of the city council for more than 2 1/2 terms in 3 consecutive terms, that service being during a term of office that began on or after January 1, 2025, shall be elected to the city council for succeeding terms. And for the mayor, 4.01, no person who has been elected to serve as the mayor for more than 2 1/2 terms in 3 consecutive terms, that service being during a term of office that began on or after January 1, 2025, shall be elected to mayor for the succeeding term.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments from the audience?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Glenn Langley. I live at 31 Victoria's Drive inside the city limits of the city of Bossier. I haven't addressed this group before, and I'm glad to be able to do it now. I've loosely followed the work of the commission, and I wanted to take this opportunity while I still had a chance, because I understand the commission's work is winding down. I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you all that I'm impressed by the vast amounts of unpaid time that you are all spending on this, not only in these halls in the late nights, but in the work that I know each of you are doing outside of this chamber, doing in polling people, polling your constituents, talking to folks, doing research, reading the volumes of materials that are stacked before you, and just thinking about what it is you're doing. I mean, I found early on that I billed clients for thinking about stuff, and they kind of fussed at me until they thought about what it was I was doing. You got to think about this stuff. These meetings take up a lot of time. They take you away from productive, paying work. They take you away from your families. They take you away from your homes in the evening at a time when you should be spending time with your families. And then I think about why you're doing what you do. It's not for the pay. It's for the betterment of our community. Whatever you decide to do, what you're doing is for the betterment of our community, however it turns out. It's a tremendous responsibility borne by each of you in trying to shepherd the debate in the face of sometimes acrimonious opposition. I was thinking about the greatest deliberative body, the United States Senate, and then I thought about, I was looking into that, and I read that, in a story that I'd heard before, that in 1856, a senator from South Carolina on one side of the debate or another of slavery, I think it was, caught the senator from Massachusetts who just made a speech in the cloakroom and beat him senseless with his cane. So it's never been the greatest deliberative body, but the important thing is that when we do work together, like Reagan and Tip O'Neill did, things can get done. This kind of behavior is particularly perplexing in light of the purpose of the commission, to consider whether to change the charter and to move the city forward, to keep us ahead of other cities in the state, to give us the opportunity to go forward, to build a better place in an already good place that we have. This is a modern society, and I despair sometimes when I see politics at work on this level, state and federal level, when debate is made personal and you can't,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
your time is
And
up.
my time is up?
Yes, it is.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time and your patience.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your comments.
Priscilla McGee, 1407 Gardenia Street, Bossier City, Louisiana. Can I ask a question before my time starts?
Sure.
Okay. I want to ask Mr. Ray, did you get the information that Madam Chairman asked you to get about could you have term limits separate from the charter?
I feel like I did. The short answer is it can be done in a way where an amended and restated charter can be on the same ballot as an amendment to that charter. I don't know that it's ever been done that way, but I was told, I did ask the question, and I felt like the answer that I got was it can be done that way.
Okay, so we can get the term limits a different item than the charter.
And that is included in this current motion.
And they could be on the same ballot, if it's
Okay.
worded correctly, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I started getting interested in this charter commission when they had started the town hall meetings. I went to 2 of those. I have been to many meetings. In fact, there was one meeting, I was the only person, and I sat right there, the only person, okay? So, this commission was appointed to revise an outdated charter. The commission, at one point, early on in the meetings, there was a 1.5-page list of things you were to review for consideration. They started out with number 1, 2, 3, 4, and perhaps 5. So then, all of a sudden, you jumped to term limits at the bottom of the page. I saw early on that on this commission, there were those who only wanted term limits, not a revised charter. And the question that I have just asked, the question posed to Mr. Ray, active attorney by Madam Chairman Vicki Whitman regarding term limits, being a separate item for the charter, this would safeguard the work already done previously for the charter. So that's something else to think about. And also, I appreciate Mr. Jeter last Wednesday when he said about what he said, that he was not resigning from this committee and others also. This is true integrity, to continue the task at hand among opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment about this option. I just want to make sure the public knows that this is not a true term limits. I know other cities do have term limits similar to this, but I don't think it accomplishes the purpose that we've done with these 2 petitions in a row. It allows you to run again after you've skipped one term. I don't think that serves Bossier City. I think the whole issue that we've been trying to address, and I could restate this over and over again, there are huge problems in Bossier City that this group has not discussed openly. I've given over 5 papers with different issues that address the debt, that address ethics problem. That was the whole problem, the whole reason why I read the information from the UL Coleman lawsuit that was summarized. You're not fixing these issues. So I think the issues that we're facing here is you're not fixing the basic problem that the citizens of Bossier see. Now, you can discuss anything you want. Mr. Jeter has been very clear that he's been trying to get this whole process delayed over and over again so you can decide term limits after the term limits petition is decided. But Mr. Jeter, I'm going to say this in a funny way, lives in a funny kind of la-la land, that he thinks he can influence you in a way that you can put this issue behind this body by letting the people decide and then moving forward. This body was rushed immediately after they saw that we were doing the petition and we were going to be successful in getting the petition done to get term limits. This is a body that was done initially to obfuscate the issues that would make the Bossier City better. And then, as I argued in City Council, then you could have a charter commission to fix the issues when you have a new council that would be able to appoint a body that would not reflect the problems that currently exist. That's what I see here. That's what I saw when you attacked Mr. Freely and tried to knock his butt off this board or this commission. It was unfair to him. The city council knew that he was the father-in-law of Councilman Smith. I think that was, so when you talk about from the body, you know, about the posterity of the group, you have to look at the past. You have to look at the meetings where they tried to make a quorum when one didn't exist. You have to listen to the comments to the public that attacked the public. These are issues, the reaction that you got in the last meeting and other meetings were because you attacked the people who were trying to make things better. So yes, this body, I've gone to almost every meeting that's been here. I have not watched them online, except maybe that I've watched every meeting twice and 3 times. So I think that this body has not always operated in a fair way to try to accomplish the goals that Bossier City Council needs to change in order to make Bossier City better. So I think that be fair to the people before you give all fairness to the body. There have been some messy meetings, but they were usually accomplished because at least one of this body attacked the public.
Calvin Hubbard, 5805 Hollyhock Lane, Bossier City, Louisiana. I have come late to this, but I have been interested for a while, and I'd like to start off with the following thought. Constitutions, bylaws, charters, and even laws are reactionary by nature. And oftentimes they lead sometimes to good things, sometimes to not so good things. The Magna Carta confronted the divine right of kings. The U.S. Constitution was a reaction to the weakness of the Articles of Confederation. The Bill of Rights was a reaction to the lack of rights stated in our own United States Constitution. The proposed Bossier City Charter is a reactionary document. You have heard some of the things that have promoted that, but it reacts to matters of importance to citizens, to the mayor, to the city council, to the departments and the operation of Bossier City. Matters that, in the language of the charter itself in chapter 2.01, are necessary or desirable to promote the general welfare of the city and the safety, health, peace, good order, comfort, convenience, and morals of its inhabitants. I say nothing new to you about your charge as when you received, I hope from, and I believe from the mayor and the city council, a suggested charter, but your charge also allowed you to look at the whole charter. And that was something that you have taken under advisement. Yes, you have 18 months. And there have been a lot of pressures and all that you have received. There are a lot of information that you have received. But you have not been mandated to incorporate the said suggestions into your amendments. You are free to go through the whole document. The work that you have done has not been done in a vacuum. You brought your own personal perspectives on these matters. You've received feedback through town hall meetings, various means of communication and public comments even in this very room. And some of you have joined this work late, after some tumultuous meetings, to say the least. For your willingness, I say thank you. Thank you for your willingness to get involved in this way. A couple of the newer commission members publicly commented as to the amount of time that you have spent trying to fulfill your duties and gain the information you needed so that you could make reasonable decisions and be a part of this body and contribute. For those of you who stayed through this time, you have endured many things. And I want to say thank you. There have been times that I'm sure it's been challenging for you to keep your mouth closed. There have been times where things have been said that have been very encouraging and enlightening. And through all those things, through all that noise, you have drafted, published, and will consider forwarding to the city council an amended charter, which, if approved, should be, based on the charter itself, forwarded to us, the electors, so that we can make a decision. And so I close with this. Did you do what you thought was best? Have you sought what was best for the city as a whole and the citizens of Bossier City? I stand and say thank you for the extra time. I believe you have, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. We've had 4 comments.
Again,
And-
are we not doing the 4 for and 4 against?
No, their
They're
rules
rolling.
or that are adopted are just 4, but can we pause for just a second? Our live feed has gone down, and I'm hesitant to continue without knowing that that's back up. Can we just kind of pause for just a second?
Recess for 5 minutes.
Back up? Getting word it's back up. Okay. Thank you.
Did you say it's back up?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It is back up? Okay. Yes, the rules that we passed, a maximum, let's see, no more than 4 speakers per agenda item, minimizing repetitive arguments. So we've had 4 speakers. We would have to amend the rules to change that.
If this were a repetitive argument, I would sit down, but I'd ask you to allow my comments.
The rule is 4 speakers, and we've had 4 speakers.
To minimize repetitive argument.
No, that's not
That's
the.
exactly what you just said.
Would you like me to read the whole rule? Any person
No, I really
desiring
don't,
to
because
address
it's
the
long.
commission shall first receive the permission of the meeting chair and will be limited to the current agenda item up for consideration. The speaker must step up to the podium microphone and state their name and address for the record. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak during the public comment period. A maximum of 45 minutes will be set aside for addressing the Charter Commission per agenda item, and no more than 4 speakers per agenda item, minimizing repetitive arguments. Any comments from the commission on,
Is that a no, officially a no, that my non-repetitive argument will not be heard?
the rules?
No, I asked you a question. Please answer my question.
The rules limit speakers to 4 people, so we are
Thank
moving
you.
on. Any comments from the commission on the motion and the second that have been made?
So, Madam Chair, I would like to make a comment. What this motion does is it allows us to move forward on the Bossier City Charter and pass on to the Bossier City Council. It pulls out those items that have been somewhat controversial or could be thought of as that poison pill that would cause the charter to not be approved. So we've pulled out the District A and B, or the Division A and B, for the at-large councilman. So this is a difference in the way that our voters would vote for the at-large. And in my mind, they have a right to vote whether they want that change or not in their charter. It is their voice. And then the second one is term limits, basically stating the same term limit terms, so 3 4-year terms. It does not have retroactivity in it. It does have sit out one term, they could run again, which makes them not the incumbent. It is the same as the state and the school board and has been tested. So that's the reasoning behind my motion.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? And Ms. Morehart, you answered one of the questions that I was going to ask. I didn't want to speak in the period of public comment, but let me just make sure that I understand, because the first time I saw this was tonight. So what you're proposing is that there be 3 ballot items. One would be essentially the amended and restated charter with all the recommended changes in it. The next ballot item would be a specific amendment on the A, B at-large districts?
Yes.
Okay. Which, just to make sure everybody understands, that's still, at-large would be the whole city. It's just right now, they elect 2, and as many people that want to qualify for that election can, and then they all run against each other. But under the proposed one, it would be, they would have to choose either A, which is the whole city, or B, which is the whole city, and then you would elect 1 from each. But you're proposing that be a separate ballot item.
Yes.
And you're proposing that because the question that I had, I thought maybe you were proposing it because you felt like, because it's on the same page as the term limit item for the council and the mayor, that it would, or at least for the council, that it needed to come out. But you're just saying that you want it on there because it may be an item that is somewhat controversial?
Well, I feel like because we've dealt with chapter 3 and 4 separately from all the edits and the approvals, that it is important for our citizens to know there is a change in the way the at-large and councilmen will be voted on. It's not a decrease in the number of votes they get, it's just a different way. And so for full transparency, I feel that the voters should be able to select whether they want that change or not.
And so then, and the third ballot item would be the term limit provision as adopted by the Charter Commission a meeting ago or 2 meetings ago or whenever that was.
Yes. So I do want to clarify, the updated Bossier City Charter would include all of the edits except the edits I announced on the at-large and the term limits. So the one that we would submit to the voters would not have that in there. It would be voted on separately.
So the 3 items would be the amended restated charter as a whole with a lot of changes, and then an amendment having an AB district, and then another amendment imposing term limits as adopted without the retroactivity.
Correct.
Now that additional information has been said, can we have public comment?
And then that would, I mean, obviously, we've talked about this before, there's a court case pending right now with another version, and if that version, if the court says put that on, then that could go on as well.
Yes.
And
Yes,
it would-
I just think that is out of our hands, the one that is in court, and we can't wait and we can't sit around and do nothing. I feel like we have to take action with what we have, and then whatever the courts decide, they decide.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get a clearer understanding of this. The only authorization that we have, from my understanding, is to look at the charter and to submit changes to the charter to the city council, and they have to take those proposed changes and submit them to the voter. The amendments that you're proposing, how do they get to the ballot? Because if they're not part of what we put in the charter, the council does not have to put them on amendment to the ballot. So I'm trying to
Yes.
understand, how are those things going to get on the ballot?
So-
Because the council may choose not to put those amendments on the ballot.
So I don't know if my wording is legal, because I'm not an attorney. I'm an accountant by trade, so in my move to adopt for submission to the Bossier City Council, the Bossier City Charter changes to be served up to the voters in 3 separate voting options. So basically, my thought is, when we send it up to the council, we send it to them requesting, these are the changes to the charter, but we would like to see them voted on separately.
And Mr. Jeter, once recommendations are made to the council, those matters have to be sent to the voters. And so if the amended and restated charter has all the changes, let's say, 90% of the changes are in there, then if your concern is that they would either change it or not send it to the voters, I don't think either one of those would happen. I think they have to take it unchanged, and they have to send it to the voters. I think what Ms. Morehart is suggesting, if I understand correctly, is that she's suggesting, in theory, to send it as 3 different items. The charter amended and restated to go on the ballot as one item, and then these 2 amendments, the one for the AB districts would be one ballot item that the voters could vote on, and then the proposal for term limits without retroactivity would be the other item. And I don't know, to be honest with you, I think that that's where we would engage outside counsel that would be able to give us guidance on exactly how to get the ballot language, but I don't think I don't think this body has to send a specific ballot language. It's not perfectly aligned with the citizens petition that we've talked about that goes, and it has to be, it goes without alteration. This body is tasked with making proposed changes to the charter, and once you send them, then the council has to send that to a vote of the people.
Madam Chair.
And they can't pick and choose what they like and what they don't like. They'll have to take the proposed amendments and send it.
So if I could just address 2, because I've been studying this a lot, and very literal, so maybe I'm wrong. But in section 21.04, it says the city council shall submit any amendment or amendments as recommended by the Charter Review Commission to the electors of the city. So that statement, in my eyes, told me that we can submit it to them how we feel it should be sent to the voters, and they shall do it.
Right, and the last sentence says, any number of proposed amendments to this charter may be submitted at any such general municipal election.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lombardito.
what I'm understanding, the voters will be allowed to vote on this charter. There'll be amendments off to the side, yes or no, is how I'm understanding this. So if we go in and the charter's there, these 3 amendments either pass or fail, the ones that pass are incorporated into the charter as amendments. Is that what I understand?
That's correct.
Clear enough for me?
I just, in my opinion on this issue, I think it's gonna confuse, in my opinion only, I think it's gonna confuse the voters. I think I deal with voters enough that when there are multiple items on the ballot, and voters are uneducated, don't read, don't study the issue, don't have the expertise in that area, they just choose not to vote on those items. And I think, it's just my opinion, but I think I would consider just submitting a clear item, a clear charter to the voters to allow them to vote up or down on everything that we've previously discussed. I don't think we need to break it down. I do agree that the issue that is currently before the courts should be settled by the courts because 33% of the voters that signed that petition for term limits, they are going to have their day in court. But I believe this issue that we've decided on and previously discussed, I'm not comfortable, me personally, with, because I think it's going to cause confusion to the voters because I'm sitting here reading it for the very first time and I still have some questions about it. So I don't know that it's going to be clear to the voters. And I think whatever we put before the voters need to be clear to the voters because one of the things that we have is a disengaged citizenship. And what we want to do is to have all of those voters that are registered and eligible to vote within the city of Bossier City to be able to look at this charter on the surface and be able to read it, understand it, and to vote on it. And I just think we're adding a lot of confusion to it. I don't think it's going to be crystal clear in my mind. I could be wrong, but to me, it's not going to be clear to the average voter that has not spent a lot of time studying this issue.
Do you want to talk about this? Okay.
Now that additional information has been spoken, may we have an additional comment time for the public?
No. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Do we have a second? Yes, we have.
Yes, Mike seconded.
Second.
You ready?
Yes.
Ms. Parks?
Yes.
Ms. Wilhite?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Jeter?
No.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Mr. Lamadino.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Lombardino, I had you as second on there.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Vote passes 6-1.
If there's no other business, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
I think Ms. Martin.
Madam Chair, I have a question. I know we're finna adjourn. So with the changes that just passed, that are gonna be reincorporated into the charter to submit to the city council, are we not gonna go over those reincorporated changes? Again, we're just gonna let them go in there and we're gonna submit it to the city council? We're not gonna come back and review this document one final time before, because this is a change that at the last meeting we discussed coming back here, voting on this items in the previous approved changes and submitting them to the city council. Now we've got a modification to what we had previously discussed and from my understanding, agreed on. So the question is, are we gonna come back one more time with the final version, with everything included, for review? 'Cause-
Madam Chair, can I address it? It's really not a change to what the revised is. It's just how it will be voted on. So there is no change in the wording. There is no change in the impact of the charter. It's truly just how the voters will vote on it. Because I pulled it just right out of the draft. I pulled each one of the sections.
And Mr. Jeter, if you look, I know you came in late, so I apologize that we didn't get a chance to, I know you had an emergency and couldn't avoid it, but there were some examples of how it may look on the ballot that I think were put in front of you.
And Madam Chair, I do understand that, and I respect that. It's just that there are some things in these changes that, you know, we previously discussed and that I don't agree with, especially when it concerns the at-large districts and not separating them and give them to the voters to make a decision on. From my interaction with voters, a lot of the voters, to be quite honest with you, they don't understand the large districts as they are. And because of the way the large districts are set up currently, A lot of voters think you're running at large and they've got a city councilman running, and some of them have the perception in their mind that you're running against their city councilman. They really don't understand the process. And having to educate voters about the process of at large and how they different from your district council persons, I just think for the average voter, and I'm not talking about those that kind of know this stuff back and forth. I'm talking about the average voters, and I'm talking about those that I deal with. They're not going to understand this, and if they don't understand it, they're not going to vote on it. They may vote on everything else on the ballot, but those things that they don't understand, they're not going to vote on them. They're going to undervote on some of these issues, and that's a concern for me.
Well, the way the motion was made is how it'd be presented on the ballot, whether it's a separate section or whether it's part of the full together charter. I mean, the language of it is gonna be the same. It's just whether it's gonna be voted on separately or together with all of the I guess you could say, and I do believe that the intent of this was to make it more clear to where there's not anything snuck in that may be, you know, that there might be some dissension about, and so that it would be clear in front of the voters exactly how they wanted to vote on those particular items. I don't know, but that was my understanding.
So the amendments will be clear and concise, short and brief? Because I understand what Mr. Jeter has proposed.
Right.
People that do not understand the amendment will vote no. And that's when they started changing the wording to where if you voted no, you were actually voting for it. Believe me, I understand, I've dealt with a lot of them as well. And I'm thinking your amendments are pretty short, brief, and to the point. And I've seen a lot of stuff on a lot of elections that was drawn out, that they can read one sentence and two sentences and either agree or disagree with it. That's my understanding.
I believe the proposition language is limited to 250 words on the ballot.
So how do we submit the charter?
Well, the way that it's been done the last two times is, we've talked about this language before. It goes on the ballot, and it's essentially, it says, do you agree with the amended restated charter as advertised in the Bossier Press on this date, and this date, and this date? So you don't put the whole charter in there. You have to, I mean, people will have to go read it, but they can read it, and it's posted different places, and then they have the opportunity to vote on the charter itself. But that's the way it was done in '05 and in '02 or '03, the time before that.
So the effect of this would be, as opposed to you had to go look at the charter beforehand and vote on it on the ballot that way, you have the actual language that you're voting on in front of you on the ballot, which to me would make it less confusing, but I don't know.
That's what I'm asking, less confusing,
Right.
in concurrence with what Mr. Jeter's asking.
So it's my understanding it would be sent to, and I'm not sure who the group is that writes it, but it would be sent to them to write up in a summary form. I think, Richard, you told us that early on. I can't remember the group that you said it would be sent to and wordsmith, basically.
I'm confident that this group doesn't have to come up with specific ballot language. I'm confident that this group can ask the council to do it in a certain way. How we get it ready to go on a ballot or, apply to the Secretary of State or the Bond Commission, those are things that we'll have to get some guidance on. But I mean,
Because we've already voted on and agreed on the actual changes. It's just how they're going to be presented. And so because those were two hot button issues, I think that the intent was to have them on the ballot for the person voting to be able to read, so.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are they dependent upon the first one passing?
No. They're separate. Yeah, and the purpose of it is, and I think we've heard it over and over again, is there a poison pill in it? And we've tried to take those 2 poison pills out of it so that we would hope that it would pass. But I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. In favor, anybody opposed? Passes unanimously.
We probably should do it by voice.
Okay. Poll us, yes.
Ms. Parks? Ms. Wilhite?
No.
You don't want to adjourn?
Ms. Martin? Yes. Mr. Jeter?
I'm not abstaining, I'm thinking I need a moment.
Okay. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardino?
No.
And I'm a yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 to 2, and 1 abstain.
Adjourn.
Motion passes.
Please quit.
And I will tell you, my concern is I just want to make sure that we have a clear plan, and it's not absolutely clear on where this goes and what we're doing with it. So if we're coming back and have to decide, that's my concern.
I believe we made a motion and it passed.
So it will go like
Send
this
it
and we don't, so who
this
takes
way.
it from here? That's my concern.
So we passed what we passed to the not city attorney.
So do we have to go ourselves and bring this to the city council, or is it now in your hands to take to the city council? That's what I'm concerned, like, do we have to meet again? Do we have to do this again? I don't want to leave and,
And our
If your
share-
concern is, I mean, I don't know the answer of how to get it on the ballot, but I know people that do. So y'all have done your job to send it to the council, and we will engage outside council to give us some guidance on
So
that.
how do we present it to the council? Do we personally deliver this document to the city council during the
Good
city
question.
council meeting? I think that's a clarification.
I think that's a great question. I think now that you've voted to send it to the council, I think it'd be appropriate to be on the next agenda where you can come and actually present it. But I think you have voted to send it in this form with the charter and then the 2 amendments.
And at the time that we submit it to the council, should not the language that in the amendment be clear at that time? Because we're talking about 2 proposed amendments that we're saying we're gonna put on the ballot, but we don't know what the language is gonna look like. But we gotta give it to the city council. So I'm thinking when we submit something to the council, it should be a finished document, because the council cannot alter or change anything that we submit to the council. So if we're gonna submit amendments to the council along with the charter to be considered separately, then they should be in final form. And I'm not clear on how we're gonna get them in final form to go before the council.
Well, Mr. Jeter, I think the charter changes will be in final form.
Right.
I don't think we will have ballot language, but I don't think there was nothing that told us we needed to develop ballot language.
But I'm thinking, what I'm saying is, I think the amendments that we're proposing need to be in final form also. Not necessarily, they may not be in perfect ballot language, but they need to be in final form to make sure that the intent of what we're submitting to the council is clear.
Well, I
And that's
think
what
the-
I'm,
Since
that's
y'all
what I'm
already
kind of
adjourned,
think
you're
the-
not actually having a public meeting, could you
Mr. Moncrief,
clarify?
can I, let
could
let
you
me,
clarify-
let me speak to my commissioner first, and then I'll get back to you. Mr. Jeter, I think that the amendments themselves are not changing. The amendments are the language that's already been adopted. So like the changes that are in the charter at the edits for the AB districts, that's exactly how it's gonna go. The language on the term limits that this body previously adopted, that's how it's gonna go. I think what's confusing, and it's confusing frankly to all of us, is how you turn it into ballot language. That's gonna be something that, I mean, I'm not comfortable saying right here, because I just saw this for the first time tonight, how this will look on a ballot and how someone makes an application, when it will go to the bond commission. I mean, all of those kind of things are not in your control, and that is things that the council will have to do, and that's why That's why we got a real smart lawyer sitting over here. I mean, that's our job as council or outside counsel for the city council to make that happen. But I can assure you, Mr. Jeter, that, you know, I've been here with you since January. I would not want anything to be changed, and the city council cannot change any of the proposed amendments. It will have to go on a ballot in that manner. Exactly what it's gonna look like, I can't tell you that sitting here tonight, but it will go on a ballot in the future with a charter and 2 amendments. And then there's the court case out there that may send a 3rd amendment that may be on the same ballot, maybe some other ballot. Those are things that we don't control. But I think the next city council meeting, Ms. Nottingham, is it next? It's not tomorrow, but it'd be the next week.
Correct.
I mean, we don't have one tomorrow, it'd be next Tuesday,
For
whatever
them
that
to
day
do the
is.
presentation, but then everything will have to come to the council in the form of an ordinance to be passed. And then on the second reading, they'll do the resolution to call for the election. So there will be, I guess at that time of the resolution, you will see the proposition language.
Yeah, I would think it'll be ready by the time it's on the city council
Yes.
agenda, but it's not something that this body has to make all of the mechanics of that. But I do think that if you're gonna make the presentation to the city council, I think you voted to send it in this format, so I think the next council meeting would be appropriate, and I'll make sure that there's an
Once it's passed,
agenda item.
applications made to the bond commission.
Ma'am?
And that, once the ordinance and resolution is passed, then make application to the bond commission, and they also do a review of the ballot language.
So all of that can be tweaked and changed, but I mean, it won't change the substance of the fact that there'll be an amended restated charter as one ballot item with all of the changes that this body has recommended, with the exception of the AB district will be a separate line item with the language that this body has adopted, and then the term limits without retroactivity will be a separate line item as this body has adopted. So 3 ballot items is what you're requesting. Mr. Moncrief.
I may have missed it in some of the beginning meetings, so you may have already explained it, but could you review why the entire city charter has to be up for vote rather than just the amendments as the city charter dictates in 2104?
Well, it doesn't have to be, and that's what we've talked about, but the charter that we're acting under right now, the 05, was done as one ballot item.
Right.
And so I've heard that argument before, but if it can't be done that way, that's the way it was done the last 2 times. The time before it failed, in 2005, it passed. It can be done either way. Frankly, Mr. Moncrief, that's a good reason for you to go vote for the new changes, because we cleaned all that up, and when you vote for that new charter, it'll correct all
If
that.
y'all weren't throwing that poison pill in there, I might just do that, Richard.
So I make a motion to adjourn
Well,
again.
I think I already did it.
We adjourned.
I mean, did it pass 4-2? We're good?
We didn't pass, we didn't have enough votes, so.
It was 4-2.
just another motion to adjourn.
I
Do we have a second? Second? All right,
Ms. Parks?
yes.
Ms. Wilhite?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Mr. Jeter?
No.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardino?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
I find it funny that no one
Motion
stated
passes.
whether or not they'll do their job, just like they didn't do their job for 2,900-plus people's name on a city chart, on a city petition of the citizens. I think it's funny that you guys think you're special and that you know they'll do their job this time.